This is a recording of one of our online sessions for parents and carers, which explores support for pupils in mainstream schools who have social, emotional and mental health needs. It is part of a short series of videos focusing on school support for pupils with different types of special educational need, or SEN. Now we know that many children and young people have difficulties which fall into more than one category of SEN, so you may want to watch another video in this series, but just bear in mind that the majority of slides about the graduated approach to SEN support will be the same in each of these videos. For this recording, I am joined by a member of the Specialist Education Service in our county of Suffolk for pupils with social, emotional and mental health needs. This team provides advice and support to schools, so they are well placed to explore what kind of strategies schools might reasonably explore with you. This recording will explore some key principles of SEN support, including whole school and whole class approaches from slide 4. I'm going to explain what's known as the graduated approach or the graduated cycle of SEN support and how you and your child are involved from slide 11. We're going to look at some examples of targeted support which schools can reasonably offer for pupils with social, emotional and mental health needs from slide 14. We'll discuss positive approaches for working with schools from slide 22, and we'll also explore the advice schools can access if a child or young person needs more support from slide 31. We've created timestamps under this video's description on YouTube, so you can click on a particular section and the video will start at that point. I'm going to be referring to the Special Educational Needs and Disability Code of Practice in this recording. This is statutory guidance, so it comes directly from law. You can download this for free. It is very long, but you could scroll through to Chapter 6, which is all about SEN support in schools, and I'll be giving exact references to the code in these slides. So let's start by looking at some key principles about support for pupils. The SEN code says that all children and young people are entitled to an education that enables them to make progress so that they achieve their best, that they become confident individuals living fulfilling lives and make a successful transition into adulthood, whether that's into employment, further or higher education or training. So schools are expected to support a child or young person to develop not just their academic skills, but the social skills and self-confidence they will need so that they can move successfully into adult life, whatever they choose to do. The law expects high quality or quality first teaching, which is personalised and flexible for the whole class. This means being flexible with the way teachers teach and communicate, and how they use resources to help all pupils understand and learn. This is called differentiation. And some pupils with additional needs may have all or some of their needs met through this differentiation for the whole class. There is a much greater recognition now that many approaches which are good for pupils with SEN are good for all pupils. So there's more emphasis on establishing inclusive learning environments where SEN support is an essential part of whole school practice rather than an add-on. In our experience, when parents meet with school to discuss support, they often want to talk about targeted interventions for their child, and we want to encourage you to also explore whole school and whole class approaches which would help your child and other pupils. Many children and young people with SEN have told us that they don't like to stand out as different in school. So the more whole school and whole class approaches are able to support them, the more included they will feel. The specialist teacher is going to walk us through the next few slides now, looking at some examples of whole school and whole class approaches, which will help pupils with social, emotional and mental health needs, and also other pupils.
So in this section, we can begin to explore some examples of adjustments that can be made throughout the whole school or within individual classrooms as part of whole school policy and provision that can support pupils with their social, emotional, mental health needs. Something that many schools use, perhaps in the classroom or within a central point within the school, is a worry box. This is often overseen by a specific adult, either the class teacher, possibly somebody who's running nurture-based provision, and it gives children the opportunity to communicate to adults some of their worries without having to use words. And sometimes it might be that they write down their worry and post it in the box. Sometimes younger children or children who prefer to might be able to draw their worry. And ideally, they put their name on it so that that adult, the designated adult, can come back to it and explore that worry with the child and talk about it and address anything that might still need to be resolved. Sometimes children might choose not to write their name on it. They might just need to post that, and actually that's my worry done. I've taken it away, I've posted it, it's done. So that can be a really good way for children to know that actually an adult can help me, but actually sometimes I can just leave my worry there. Another thing that works really, really well is sensory boxes that can be in the classroom. They can sometimes be in a quiet area of the classroom for people who need that little bit of sensory withdrawal, where everything's actually perhaps got a little bit too much and they just need some quiet time. And that could be having something they can put over their head. It might be headphones they can use. It might be soft materials, things they can fiddle with, fiddle toys. So they can use their touch. They might use sight. Sometimes they might have little lights, torches in there. So they can just take a little bit of a break. Some children might need to discharge some of their energy because they've actually been quiet, sort of dulling down some of their senses for a little while and concentrating, and might actually need to have some active things in a sensory box in a different part of the classroom so they can actually get moving and do something active to enable them to actually then concentrate a little bit more, again, on some formal learning. So that can really help with just taking a break from learning for a while, readjusting yourself and coming back. Another thing that many schools use is something called the Thrive approach. Now, those of you who haven't heard of this is an approach that's based very much on development opportunities and appropriateness of child development for what we're providing for children within school. And often this takes the form of an assessment of individual needs. It's not an assessment of parenting or actually really provision within the school. It's an assessment of how that child is managing within the school environment. What parts of their social and emotional development do we need to support to enable them to access the environment within school? Often this takes place after the individual assessment. There'll be some one-to-one support perhaps from an adult using some different strategies, some activities. But when we talk about embedding the Thrive approach, what we really want to see is schools taking that approach throughout their whole school so that everybody knows about Thrive and what that intervention is trying to achieve. Much of Thrive is based on using nurturing approaches and relationships and developing really positive relationships with the children so that actually all staff within the school really work hard to connect with the children, to support them and to understand what might be going on for them when they maybe display certain behaviours. Another thing that goes alongside this really is educating pupils on the importance of well-being and strategies to maintain this. So it might be that you have a standalone lesson, perhaps within a secondary school or Key Stage 2, where we might talk to the children specifically about well-being, what that means, our physical well-being, our emotional well-being, how they work together, and maybe sharing strategies that work really, really well to maintain it, trying to develop new ones to support the children. Sometimes with younger children, this might not be a standalone lesson. It might be a standalone lesson that's followed up with some activities and maybe play-based activities as well for younger children. So we can start to think about maintaining our well-being. It could be through role play, puppets, stories, lots of different ways for them to start thinking about what we mean by well-being and how important that is. Another thing that really helps alongside this is providing information on and support for young people around self-resources. And we have a photograph here of the Couth website, which is a really, really good website for older children to look at. There's loads of resources they can look on there. It's really designed to target young people's interests, and it's safe. So it's very closely monitored for young people, and is a really, really good source of information for them. Some more whole school adjustments we could look at. So sometimes we might have buddies or student mentors in a primary school. It might be you have the year sixes supporting the younger children, or it might be in a high school you've got your year 11s or year 9s supporting year 7s, actually basing it on maybe the cohort of children, their particular needs and interests, and matching them. So you actually might have a very responsible cohort that might work with maybe a cohort of children that struggle with their social and emotional well-being. And they can be really, really good role models for them. Again, this is true of playground leaders and pupil wellbeing ambassadors. It might be the school council that have wellbeing ambassadors, or school prefects that can be wellbeing ambassadors. And again, really good role models for the children. Playground leaders are brilliant as well, because actually they can be on the playground and notice those children who might need a bit of extra support. And again, this comes back to a lot of our Thrive approach. It's really noticing when people are struggling, noticing when children are struggling, and being there to support them, because actually a lot of the time they find it really, really hard to go up to somebody and actually verbalise and say, I'm finding things really difficult. Alongside this, collecting the pupil voice is very, very important. What do the children think about the support on offer? Their voice is incredibly important, because if children feel that their voice is heard, they're much more likely to be involved in what we're trying to achieve. Another thing many schools provide are physical activities. Might be yoga, tai chi. This can be built into the PE curriculum. Might be something that we use to start the day. And again, physical activities might be calming, like yoga and tai chi. Conversely, we might have some really active things children can do to discharge a little bit of energy. Again, quiet room for use at lunch and playtimes can be invaluable for many, many children who just need to have some time away from the noise. Lunchrooms can be really noisy and very overstimulating. And sometimes the social aspect of the playground, of the lunch hall, can be just so difficult for those children, and they just actually need some time away. But this enables them to still have contact with other children. So they can still have that social interaction, but it's perhaps in a much safer environment with an adult who can support them if they need extra help. Whole class adjustments that we might see, and I'm sure you may have seen these in classrooms: visual timetables and consistent routines. So if we have consistent routines within our classroom, actually children often just follow them because they know what they are. They're the same every day. They're safe, they're familiar, they know what happens, one thing after the other after the other. Visual timetables are a really good way to support this, just for children to suddenly look at it and think, what is next? I've forgotten. Oh yes, it's that. Sometimes with that as well, it's really helpful when adults acknowledge when things haven't quite gone to plan, because inevitably within a busy school that does happen, and sometimes we are supposed to have PE after playtime, but for whatever reason we can't. And it's important that that visual timetable is there and we acknowledge to the children, I'm really sorry, this has been a change, because it helps them actually manage times when things don't quite go to plan in a safe environment. Another thing that really helps children is making the task expectations clear. Children who maybe find it difficult to organise themselves, you can break things down maybe into just 2 things. Now you're going to write the title. Next, you're going to read something from your book. And it just breaks that task down into very, very small sections so they don't feel overwhelmed by what they have to do. Some children might be able to break it down further. So we might have 5 things that they need to do in order. But again, it's breaking that task down so they're not worrying about the whole thing. They can organise one thing at a time. And again, it's visual, so they can just see and get that satisfaction from ticking it off or taking the now bit off and moving to next, so they can really see how they're moving forward with a task. Another thing that's really important is adapting questions and giving time for pupils to process the answers and to think about their answers. It's very easy when you're teaching a mainstream class to move things through quickly. We want to get through our learning, but actually some children and adults need time to process that information, and it's important that they're allowed that time just to stop and think, and actually we make that part of our classroom practice so that it's okay. Sometimes people do need time to think about things. That's all right. And sometimes children need the question rephrased in a slightly different way because maybe we haven't used language they understand. Or it might be we need to repeat the question exactly as it is because actually the child's only heard the last bit of that question and we just need to repeat it exactly the same. So they're not trying to process something new, we're just repeating what they are trying to process, and that's why it's really important schools have an understanding of the needs of children within the class because they will be so different and so diverse. And knowing the children really helps you to make those adjustments that are just right for them. Sometimes we get it slightly wrong, but again, it's about acknowledging that with the children and saying, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. What might help you gaining pupil voice again? So again, children with social, emotional, mental health difficulties will need a lot of help with expressing their feelings. Some children might find it really, really easy, and we can see those children expressing their feelings. They might make themselves very well known, but actually sometimes it might be that children are suppressing their feelings and they need help to communicate that to adults. So loads and loads of different things that can happen within the classroom. These are just a few. So we've got the traffic light system there, so children to very quietly say, I don't understand. It's horrible putting your hand up and saying, I don't understand that, but actually indicating that quietly on a traffic light system, and it might be they just put a mark in their book, is a much more subtle way of doing it, and then the teacher can go back and address that. Gaining pupil views on what matters, what good support looks like. Sometimes we think we know what good support looks like, but the children have a very different view, and they might often come home and say, I've had no help today, when actually they have, but they haven't realised that. And actually maybe we need to change it so the support is what they need, what they want, and so they understand what support looks like. We might have feeling spaces, emotion cards, so we can perhaps as adults model how we're feeling and encourage the children to come and tell us. And if we carry those round with us, you may see lots of adults in school do that. Children have those easily accessible so they can go up to the adult and show them without having to tell them. Having displays on the wall about how you feel today, feelings faces as well, so you can sort of look at the expressions, because often children don't realise what that expression might look like on somebody else's face or their own face even. Then we may have timeout cards. So this is really helpful to support children to understand how they're feeling, and it might be that initially an adult has to say to them, I think you need a break. You look unhappy, you look upset, I think you need some time to calm down. So actually the children using those independently and giving that to the teacher, saying that I need some time out. Sometimes we can worry that children are going to overuse these, but actually the more they do it, the more responsible they get, because they actually do need that, and they realise actually using it all the time doesn't help them. Another thing we might have is indicating, as in a whole class, how we're feeling, but it might be anonymous, so putting something under a post-it note or putting your name up there. This is how I feel today. You may see some schools use something called zones of regulation, which is different colours to indicate different feelings, and the children can put that there, and actually as the class teacher you can get a very quick visual picture of how your class are feeling on the whole today. And it helps the children to identify a lot of their emotions as well, and understand that often other children feel the same way that they do, so they don't feel so isolated.
Now, we've talked about the fact that whole class and whole school adjustments may meet the needs of some children with additional difficulties, but there will be others who will need more help. They may have a special educational need identified, which means they need support which is additional to or different from the support made generally for other children or young people of the same age. Following the Children and Families Act of 2014, nurseries, schools and further education colleges are expected to follow what's known as the graduated approach to SEN Support. This involves a 4-stage cycle of assess, plan, do and review, and we're going to look at each of these stages in turn in this recording. Schools must inform you when they are making special educational provision, which means support, for your child. Now, the first stage in the cycle is assessing your child's needs, and this is where the setting draws on their understanding of your child's progress and attainment, draws on the views of you and your child, and if relevant, the advice of external services. The SEN code is clear that schools should take seriously any concern raised by a parent. The second stage is where support for your child is planned. Here the teacher, and often the Special Educational Needs Coordinator or SENCO, explores and agrees with you, and as far as possible with your child, what support and interventions they will offer based on what your child needs to be able to do. The plan can also include how parents can be involved in supporting this process at home. It should be clear what impact is expected from these support strategies, and also a date for reviewing these to check that they are working. And all teachers and support staff, including teaching assistants and lunchtime supervisors, should be made aware of this support plan, and it should be recorded. So even though there is no longer a requirement for an individual education plan or IEP, you can ask for a copy of the support plan. Now we're just going to pause for a moment to think about the kind of support that schools might reasonably explore with you. Remember though, these are just examples. Every child is different and will present with different needs, so this is just to help build your overall understanding and confidence when talking to schools.
Another thing that could be offered in primary schools is something called ELSA support. So this is emotional literacy support, and that's run by emotional literacy support assistants who would receive training from our psychology and therapeutic team. And that support is ongoing. So once they've done their training, they have access to further support from that team to help them with the provision they have planned in school. And again, it's often in small groups, sometimes one-to-one if a child really needs that. And it's all based on recognising emotions and managing emotions. Another thing that you might hear schools offering is Lego therapy. This is very structured therapy. It's not just playing with Lego. There are different roles assigned to all the children who take part in the activity. And it's very structured by the adults, so it's very safe, and the children have to develop language skills in order to explain how this model is going to be built. And actually they can take it in turns for the different roles. So again, understanding turn taking, listening, develops a wealth of skills within the children. Or it might just be circle times within the classroom. Regular circle times, perhaps after playtime, after lunchtime, just a very quick, how are we feeling? And again, it's often very structured, passing round an object. So when you've got the object, you can talk, but if you don't, it's your turn to listen. Again, teaching children skills of communication. Within secondary schools, you may have drawing and talking. And again, that might be a very formal thing. It might just be children have books that they can draw in and then share that with an adult or keep to themselves. It's up to them. We've mentioned Kooth. So again, really, really good online resource. Many high schools have posters of Kooth all around to just support the children to understand it's there and it's there to help you. We also have within Suffolk 4YP counselling. Schools might refer children for that specific counselling because sometimes it's really helpful to talk to somebody out of school and out of the family who's actually not got any connection to you at all. And often children will be more willing to say and be honest about perhaps the school or something they're not happy about with somebody impartial rather than a member of school staff. Something some high schools provide as well is nurture groups. It should be a short-term intervention, so something that the children can access for a short time to address their social and emotional skills and help them to then properly get back into the classroom to access learning full time with the support of an adult so that some of their social and emotional needs have been addressed.
Schools can record your child's needs and support in different ways. They might use resources like pupil passports or one-page profiles like the templates you can see on screen. Whatever form is used, what is important is that you and your child have been fully involved and fully understand what has been agreed. In order to engage with the support in school, your child needs to understand what the point is, in other words, what they will be able to do with the help. And they need to know what that support will look like so they can be prepared for what to expect. And you need to be clear so that you can support your child to work with school. Now we come to the third stage in the graduated cycle of support, where the setting gets on and puts the agreed support in place. With the support of the SENCO, the class or subject teacher oversees the support and should work closely with teaching assistants and specialist staff to assess the impact of the support plan. The law is clear that schools must use their best endeavours to make sure that a child with SEN gets the support they need. This means doing everything they can to meet children and young people's SEN. However, this doesn't mean that they all have to offer the same strategies, and the culture and physical environment of a school can influence this. Every child is different, and sometimes schools may need to try different ideas before they find what works best for your child. So if a setting is unable to offer a particular strategy that you or your child requests, it's important to ask, what can they offer instead that will have a similar impact to meet your child's needs? What is key is that they are doing all they can to meet your child's individual needs. And the final and very important stage in the graduated cycle is the review, where the setting evaluates the impact and quality of the support, deciding on any changes with you and your child. So you will be looking at what has worked well, what hasn't worked as well as expected, and what the setting can do next to try and help your child make better progress. The SEN Code says that parents should have clear information about the impact of the support and interventions provided, enabling them to be involved in planning next steps. So just to be clear, for nurseries and schools, the SEN Code says that parents and pupils should be involved in 3 stages of the graduated cycle: in assessing your child's needs, in exploring and agreeing the plan of support, and at the review. As the SEN Code states, parents should be fully aware of the planned support and interventions. For further education settings, the emphasis will be on exploring and agreeing support directly with the young person. However, the SEN Code states that parents should be involved, particularly for those aged 16 to 18 years. The SEN Code also says that parents know their children best, and it's important that all professionals listen and understand when parents express concerns about their child's development. They should also listen to and address any concerns raised by the children and young people themselves. Research has shown that pupils make the best progress when families, schools, and where relevant, the local authority, are working together in equal partnership. So we encourage you to approach school offering to work with them to support your child. When preparing to meet with school to explore SEN support for your child, you might like to make bullet point notes of what you and your child think have been working well, what your child is still struggling with, and any ideas that you or your child think might help. Or you may find that a one-page profile helps your child or young person to share and capture their views. The Helen Sanderson, Chef Kids, and Preparing for Adulthood websites have many person-centered resources and one-page profile templates which you can download for free, like the one you can see on screen. This short video, created by the Psychology and Therapeutics Services in Suffolk, explains what a one-page profile is and how to create one. Some families have chosen to take photos with their child or young person of the resources and approaches which help best at home or have helped in previous settings and have emailed these to school. Don't forget to share what your child enjoys doing. If your child is distracted or upset at school, presenting or talking about something they enjoy may be the best way to help them refocus or calm down. We would encourage you to acknowledge the school view and experience along with sharing your own. It's common for pupils with additional needs to present very differently at school and at home, as the environments and structure of the day are so different. So aim to pool everyone's understanding about your child's needs in equal partnership. Agree to work towards the future. Try not to dwell on past problems. It's helpful to spend the majority of your discussions on exploring solutions together. And before your meeting ends, check back and record any agreed actions or ask the school to email a record to you. Make sure that you all have the same perception of what has been agreed, who is responsible, and what the reasonable time frame is for these actions to happen. We can offer a session for parents and carers called Working with Schools, which explores practical and solution-focused approaches for preparing for and managing meetings and conversations with school or the local authority. It's helpful for you to be aware of the school's SEN information report. All schools must publish this report on their website, and the information must include explaining how the school assesses a child's SEN, how they review your child's progress, and evaluate how effective the SEN support plan is. It must show how the school will involve you and your child in the process of identifying and supporting SEN, and explain the approach to teaching pupils with SEN and how adaptations are made to the curriculum and to the environment. This report is a tool for you and your child to refer to. It should increase your confidence and your child's confidence and understanding of the graduated cycle of SEN support. The SEN code therefore says that it should be easily accessible and written in a way which is easy for you and your child to understand. When your child is moving to a new school, the SEN information report will be a good starting point to help you to find out more about the SENCO and the school approach to SEN support. SEN support should include planning and preparation for the transitions between different phases of education and preparation for adult life. You may find our training sessions and videos around transition helpful, along with information and frequently asked questions on our SENDIAS website. Now, we've talked about the fact that the law expects the needs of the majority of pupils with SEN to be met through the 4-stage cycle of SEN support. But sometimes, despite a setting's best endeavours and trying different strategies of support, a child or young person might still struggle with their learning and require more support. The SEN code says that where a pupil in school continues to make less than expected progress, despite evidence-based support and interventions matched to the pupil's area of need, the school should consider involving specialists. And in further education settings, the SEN code still expects specialist help to be involved where the student's needs are not being met by strong evidence-based support. So who might these specialist and outside agencies be? Every county will have some specialist services able to support schools to support pupils with SEN, and the county's local offer website will give details of these. In our county of Suffolk, there are 5 specialist education services. The first 4 services match the categories of special educational need outlined in the SEND Code of Practice. So there is a cognition and learning team, who can offer support and advice for pupils with a range of learning needs, including moderate learning difficulties and specific learning difficulties like dyslexia and dyscalculia. The SEMH team offers support for pupils with a range of social, emotional and mental health difficulties. The Communication and Interaction team offers advice and help for pupils with speech and language and/or social communication needs. And there is a team to offer advice and support for pupils who have sensory and physical needs. This includes pupils with hearing and visual loss or multisensory loss, and physical difficulties like issues with coordination and balance and gross and fine motor skills. In addition, our County of Suffolk has a whole school inclusion team which supports whole school practice around SEND and inclusion. In line with the SEND Code of Practice, these specialist education services can support children and young people between the ages of 0 to potentially 25 years if the young person is still in some form of education or training and there are still learning needs. No formal diagnosis or education health and care plan is needed to access these education services. Parent consent is required and the education setting should discuss the referral with you, sharing aims and what everyone would like your child to be able to do with the additional support and advice. Every county council will employ a team of educational psychologists, and in Suffolk, the Psychology and Therapeutic Services can offer further advice and support around emotional well-being, mental health, behaviour and learning on an individual, group and whole school basis. Their service also includes a team of inclusion facilitators who can offer immediate therapeutic support, frequently at times of transition or high anxiety.
Finally, we have our Specialist Outreach SEMH service. So, as part of this service, we offer support to mainstream schools for pupils from reception year to year 11, and we work with children who have a range of social, emotional and mental health needs. We take an individualised approach to pupils' needs, so there's no one way of supporting a school or a pupil. We take on board all the information from the school, from the family, from the pupil, and devise a plan that's going to be appropriate for them. This might be modelling strategies, so it might be working with the pupil, working with the school around modelling strategies for small group interventions or particular things like drawing and talking or Lego therapy. We might just offer advice to the school. Actually, these pupils might have a really good working relationship with somebody in school, and we actually work through them so that they can develop their practice and their strategies. Sometimes we might work directly with the pupil if that's appropriate. It might be that they just need somebody to help give their voice, to give their opinions, and actually somebody from outside is really what they need to be able to do that, with the knowledge that we will be sharing that information with the school and helping and supporting to develop that relationship. However, sometimes we find pupils who don't have a good relationship with their mainstream school actually need to develop that, and sometimes having somebody external can almost prevent that happening. So under those circumstances, possibly we may work on developing relationships within the school, listening to the pupil, listening to the school, working out who might be a really good adult and coaching and mentoring that adult to develop that relationship with that child so that it can be sustainable and long term. Another thing we offer schools are in-school and online support and training. So a school might have a lot of children with SEMH needs and might ask for some whole school training from us, which we would deliver. Another thing schools have is weekly inclusion support meetings for all schools, exploring ideas for early intervention. Now, schools can book on this via the Specialist Education Services website, and they get access to a teacher within the SEMH team to talk through early worries. So when a child is starting to find things difficult, what can they do? So they can come to us and we can offer some advice, some guidance, some strategies that might help. And normally schools implement that and the ideal is that actually we do see some progress because school just needed a little bit of help to move things forward. Sometimes it does happen that school implement things and things don't move forward, and that's at the point where they may think of making a referral directly into the SEMH service for some more targeted support in line with what I've just said. So schools have the option of getting to us a lot earlier to just discuss things that might just be worrying them. So that's an overview of strategies that could be used to support children within school with SEMH and our service. So thank you very much to listening for that.
If a child or young person may need support which goes beyond the resources available to settings for SEN Support, it may be helpful to request what's called an Education, Health and Care, or EHC, needs assessment. These assessments help identify the education, health and care needs which are making it difficult for a child or young person to learn, and will identify the support which may be required to meet those needs. A parent or young adult between the ages of 16 and 25 years can request an EHC needs assessment at any time. We have lots of information and videos about the EHC process on our Suffolk SENDIAS website and YouTube channel, which you might find helpful, along with further information about inclusion and equality for children with special educational needs, disabilities and medical conditions. If your child may be experiencing emotionally based school avoidance, or EBSA, the Psychology and Therapeutic Services in our county of Suffolk have worked with families to produce some free resources which may help you and your child's school support your child or young person. And they have also co-produced with parents and carers some free downloadable resources to help with well-being, including a series of 5 top tips for families. This video was made by Suffolk SENDIAS, but every county has an impartial and confidential SEND information, advice and support service.